Very good afternoon to everyone. My name is Karina Kuok, and I'm the Head of Professional Practices here at IHRP. My team and I are responsible for curating learning content and programming for our 2,200 strong IHRP certified professionals. In fact, earlier, I think some of you are still hanging on from the earlier session, we had just completed the virtual conferment ceremony to welcome our latest batch of 521 HR professionals to the IHRP family. So congrats to our newly conferred certified professionals. We are very pleased that this webinar on the topic of COVID-19 catalysts for culture change has attracted actually over 800 signups. And this webinar is actually part of the IHRP Master Professional webinar series, where we invite our IHRP Master Professionals to dialogue and share their perspectives and words of wisdom regarding addressing COVID challenges and opportunities at the workplace. Today, it gives me great pleasure to be moderating this panel, which is featuring 3 of our 22 IHRP Master Professionals. My panelists for today are Ms. Carmen Wee, IHRP Master Professional, board member of the HTX and IHRP COVID-19 Taskforce Chairperson. She's really been a really excellent leader in leading us in curating all these COVID resources, which we've also made available to the public. In addition, I also have Mr. Prasad, who is Senior Director of Strategy, People and Organization at GovTech. And last but not least, we have Mr. Norbert Ehlert, who is Executive Director for HR, Research and Development Asia, Middle East, Africa at Procter & Gamble. I shall now turn to each of them to provide a brief self-introduction. So we'll follow the sequence on the slide. Carmen, over to you first.
Thank you, Karina, for this opportunity to share at the MP webinar. First of all, I just want to congratulate all the conferees today. You have reached a very significant milestone and you play such a critical and essential role for the companies that you serve out there. I've been an HR practitioner for more than 2 decades, and currently I am leading the IHRP COVID-19 Task Force. So happy to be here and to share my knowledge and to really learn from all of you too.
Thank you so much, Carmen. Prasad, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Carmen. And congratulations are in order to everybody who received their conferment today. It is a huge milestone, like Carmen mentioned. So it's a pleasure to be here, always energizing to interact with the fraternity. A very quick intro, something that I've been using for the past year or so. Very proud HR professional, with about 20 years in the corporate, 7.5 years with Infosys, 12 years at Google. About a year and a half is something that I spent running my own exec coaching and talent advisory practice, Noetic Step, based in Singapore. And now a very grateful and a proud Singapore public servant. As Karina mentioned, I'm with GovTech and responsible for corporate strategy, human resources, OD, workplace, and culture. I have to add one statement. I've been blessed to have worked in organizations where HR function was in the front and center of organization strategy. And I'm very proud of what we do as a function and what I get to contribute to. The prize position was also a result of how each one of us in the function showed up. Learned from my mentors early on who taught me that we do not need anyone else to tell us if we are important or otherwise. It's for us to know, do, and be. And once that happens, everyone will see that too. So here's to the pride for the profession. Norbert?
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry that I look like a ghost. I hope I look better on your camera than I look at mine. I tried really hard to look reasonable, but it looks like a ghost picture. My name is Norbert. I'm originally from Germany. I started in banking and then switched quickly over to FMCG with Procter & Gamble. Worked in Germany, a few locations there, in Switzerland. And already in 2002, I came over to Asia, to Singapore, where my home is now. I've worked in Japan, in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Greater China as well. All with P&G. It was not boring. In fact, actually, every year there is another very interesting challenge, and that's why I'm still here. I worked and started in HR 23 years ago, as I started with Procter & Gamble. Interestingly, because I didn't study it originally, but I fell in love with the function, and I do believe in lifelong learning. And so the achievement you have received today is an additional step in your career. And I can look back when I started my HR career, this will be a very rewarding journey. I have the pleasure to be with you here today in the panel.
Thank you, Carmen, Prasad, and Norbert. Excellent introduction. Looks like between the three of you, I actually have a cumulative years of experience of probably over half a decade. So definitely lots of wisdom and knowledge that we're looking forward to glean from all of you. Okay, as we have experienced over the last few months, this global pandemic has truly disrupted company operations, business strategies, changed the way we had to think, and also, how we do business, servicing our customers and even our internal customers, such as employees. So the first question I would like to pose to each of my panelists is, could you share some examples of how you directly seen COVID-19 catalyze change within the organization? Maybe I'll start off with Norbert first.
Sure, I can. Thank you. First, I think it is important to recognize that this is not a temporary change. It is been a significant time where we have been under COVID, and probably that's why it helps us or forces us to lasting changes in terms of scope, because this is a long period of time and it's global. We have seen earlier crises like SARS mainly was an Asia crisis, but the rest of the world more or less moved on. And this is a very different situation. And the digital transformation has significantly accelerated in the last 2 to 3 months. Some of the digital transformations have been there already before. Other actually came in as the crisis hit us, and we needed to have resources in order to collaborate. This has enabled other changes to take place, often evolving, iterative, but a new process has been established. Suddenly found ourselves all together sitting at home, seeing different kitchen and living rooms, in-laws, kids, dogs walking around. And we needed to learn from yesterday to today how to work differently. And the human behavior in organizations, I believe, probably have changed definitely within, and we will see as time will tell whether how fundamentally changed these changes are. In fact, what we knew in the past, what was just an employee who was working from home, now without any option given, many of us and all of us actually suddenly were working from home from yesterday to today. Think about how some manager organization defined work before and how it must be performed. Like office attendance was for many actually required in order to be perceived as a diligent employee. And I'm not speaking for my organization only, but I think I speak in general. Line managers maybe have talked more with the direct reports and their teams under COVID than in the normal period of time, because suddenly we realized if we don't contact, then people do not know what to do. The same is with aligning of projects. Employees learn to be more concrete at what is needed in order to proceed with project and what's expected, what is the measure. And people in general learned to focus more on what matters and less on appearance. That means it's okay. Even you see me as a ghost, more or less, I guess. We have learned to ignore that for the benefit of this call, because content is really what matters most. That increased one-to-one timings with line managers, coaches, and people benefited from a higher learning curve probably because they had more airtime with their respective coaches and line managers. We learned also that some trouble can be effectively be avoided using new capabilities, something which we somehow knew but never really accepted, and now we better know how to do it. Company values like trust were refreshed under COVID. people really working? That was doubted sometimes when they were working from home. Are you really working from home? And whatever team collaboration you use, whether it is Skype or Teams, people were constantly watching whether people on red, that means they are on their computer. I think this time has passed. People know that they need to deliver certain projects, and they don't care anymore whether they are in green, yellow, or green.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Norbert. Maybe, I think you've shared with us the global perspective, given that P&G has got, offices worldwide. Maybe I can invite Carmen to share a little bit.
Yeah, so thanks, Norbert, and for your comments. Essentially, we have seen a few strands of culture change. So every time the company changes the way it communicates with you, engages you, trains you, looks after you from a well-being perspective, and also builds team, then there has been a culture shift, right? So we've seen this during COVID, and we have examples of many companies. So everybody has been talking about, the human experience and, putting the human experience in the center of what we do. And with this COVID, it has really brought this topic to the fore, and now it's really practice time, yeah. So the whole human experience, the employee experience is front and center right now. So while many of these employee life cycle activities have been, created virtually, there's still no change around how other companies have also brought a bit more personal touch and a more human touch to the way they have engaged with employees. So you hear companies doing, giving free Grab food vouchers. Today, there's a company that sent tea snacks to their entire company. And I know some HR leaders are sending some, nice treats to their HR teams as well. To involving family members in some of the programs as well. I think, some companies have also implemented parent-child programs to help the families cope during this time. So in essence, you see that whole shift and acceleration and the actualization of that human and employee experience during this COVID situation in terms of our HR practice. And I think that can only augur well. And obviously, culture change cuts both ways. And I've also seen and heard horror stories of companies where, they require the employees to turn on their Zoom throughout the day so that they can monitor the employees, or every employee has to check in at 9:30 in the morning and to report to the boss what they're going to do for that day. But I would like to believe that those companies are far and few, and there are many companies out there that's really doing their best, helping and training their managers to be a bit more human, empathetic, and to be more effective in listening to the challenges of the employees.
Thank you, Carmen. Yes, and then maybe Prasad, since it's the first question, you could also add some of your insights and sharing.
Absolutely, and Norbert, and Carmen, I'll probably add to what you've said. Some of it could be a reiteration of the messages. We've often spoken about future of work, and for a large part, it was just theoretical, it was a fad, what have you, but I don't believe there was 100% appreciation or understanding of what that was. And future of work does include people, places, practices, and processes. What we've seen COVID catalyze is the change or accelerate change in all these aspects. There have been changes in the way we're working with people, and that goes back to what Carmen just said. We've been seeing changes in a way practices are being done, and that Norbert shared, and of course the workplaces are changing and will continue to change. The unexpected burning platform, in my opinion, the biggest takeaway is that it's actually shown us that there is indeed a different way to work, leading into a possibility of a potential hybrid or a blended way of work, because we all know that it can be done differently. And most importantly, it's tested and possibly strengthened the resilience, the adaptability, and the skill of being comfortable with the uncomfortable. I'll share a couple of examples from each one of these. When we're talking about people, almost every single people practice has gone virtual. I can share examples from GovTech, from interviewing to onboarding to engagement to learning, we moved to virtual. We moved virtual. We went virtual with interviews even before the circuit breaker started, but we obviously practiced that. And over time, we moved some other processes. Entire compensation cycle this time was virtually done. The post-performance conversations were virtual. And some of our big engagements where we would have brought in the entire organization under one roof was designed differently, and then we took that virtual as well. In terms of places, I think I'm preaching to the choir, but everything from safe distancing to enhancing efforts on hygiene and cleaning, to redesigning seating in meeting rooms, to accelerating video capabilities for all of us to meet. I think we've seen that shift, and what might not have been considered critical, most organizations did not have a choice but to accelerate that and get that done in, say, 2 days, 2 weeks, maybe a little more. So we've seen a significant change happen, and therefore no doubts about the fact that this situation has accelerated change, and that happens both digital and otherwise.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Prasad. In fact, you set me up quite well for the next question. I think all of my speakers, you've talked about how the technology have really been a critical enabler in COVID times, because I guess, we're all part and parcel of this global work from home experiment. So maybe, I can get, either some or all of you to share what are some more practical, tangible examples of how you've seen your leaders, your line managers really harness the power of technology to better connect and engage with this virtual workforce and even customers?
So maybe I could take that. I think before COVID, most companies never really had to think about collaboration tools. And I can say this is quite prevalent in the SME community. In the MNC companies, is pretty common with Yammer and Slack and Zoom and Skype and those kinds of tools. So there's been a massive steep learning curve to even know how to use Zoom, right, in the first place. And then using Zoom and then learning how to share slides and learning how to use that to engage, to speak into a very virtual, picture or image, right, of your employee. And right now there's a plethora of technologies around contact tracing, temperatures, tracking, tracing, house parties, right? I mean, you have many, right, to get everybody engaged. Now, I think what's interesting that I see on the horizon, there's a company in Switzerland right now that's testing. In the past, they used to use their technology to sense, right, the some of the female health needs and all that, but they've kind of refashioned their technology, adjusted it so that they can even catch some of the internal health signals before the symptoms perhaps of COVID, right, becomes very prevalent. So they're trying to pilot that and trying to trace that so that it even helps to bring about a higher alert system in place to help countries, companies, etc. So I think that's an interesting pilot that we will see with the results, and whether there could be a wider adoption, right, on a global basis.
Great, thank you. Anybody else would like to share a little bit about how technology have really come into play in a big way as your leaders start engaging with your staff in the midst of all this crisis, ambiguity, anxiety, and so on?
Absolutely, Karina. I can share a couple of examples, and then before that, I'd also want to impress upon our audience here that I've always maintained that tech has a huge role to play in enabling us, and I want to repeat that it is important that we manage tech and not the other way around. So even when we are in the middle of some of our team meetings, etc., and when we ask people around, so how are you feeling with work from home? How are you feeling with being on Skype or Zoom the full day? One of the constant responses that we get is that there isn't a differentiation of time between work, home, etc., because we are home all the time. So that's a classic case of tech managing us and not the other way around. So I'd want to call upon for each one of us and how we influence our employees, the organization, to make sure that we need to be aware of when tech starts managing us and when it should be the other way around. and then, maybe have certain distinctions in terms of times or what have you. Otherwise, it's very easy to get out of bed, come right into a meeting and finish your last meeting and get back into bed. So without time. So I just wanted to kind of call that out. And two examples that, that I wanted to share from GovTech. And I'm calling out these examples because in a typical scenario without COVID, these would have been 100% physical engagement for us. So one of them is what we're calling the Home But Not Alone series. We realized that, with extended work from home, etc., that we're all in the middle of, while people are talking to every day, the engagement is getting more, but there's also a space that we need for them to be heard, for them to be, cared for, etc. So what we did was introducing an email engagement from all the leaders in the organization. We planned a six engagement series where every week and a half, we have one of the senior leaders sending out a note, sharing some progress of what we're doing for COVID, the interesting work that's happening, asking them, how they're feeling, maybe running a poll or so, and then just giving them a platform to share feedback and then, write back to us. So that was one. The second one that we are currently in the middle of is, again, this is more of a video engagement. So a couple of us leaders are co-hosting meetings with about groups of 30 GovTechies. And then we are intentionally looking at everybody who joined us between January this year and now. Most of them haven't come into office for more than 2 hours and just to collect their devices, but their orientation was completely virtual, etc. And some of them had just started coming and they were getting to know the office, their managers, etc. And then we had to, kind of move virtual. So we're focusing on them, and that has been a huge eye-opener for us in terms of, what we could do better and what we could do differently to engage them, to make them understand our space, just not GovTech, but the whole of government and our role in that, and then what's happening. So these two certainly would have been in a meeting setup, both moved virtually and then both giving us amazing insights while strengthening the engagement with our GovTechies.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand what you mean. We also had some new hires on board on IHRP, and it's been challenging because they have not been able to interact, with the rest of the broader IHRP, and so definitely resonate with what you've just shared. I've got one more question before we're gonna open it up for open Q&A. So please feel free to type any questions that you may have into the Q&A chat. So my last question for the panelists is that I think, what we've heard is, as we said, COVID has brought about, quite a lot of disruptions, but I think it's also brought about good opportunities and positive change for the organization, as we've heard from the panelists here. And so in order not to waste all these great positive changes that we've seen, what advice can you give to HR so that they can continue to influence their organization, their leaders, their employees to sustain these positive momentums? Because I think, for some of us who attend offsites, it's all well and dandy at offsite, then we come back, then everything goes back to status quo, which we hope won't happen, right? So maybe you can share a little bit about what are some of the things you're thinking about yourself in order to influence and sustain this positive change.
Yeah, I can probably go first, Karina. I absolutely second what you just said, never waste a crisis. In fact, I read a quote recently that's really impressed me. This is from Nabil Sabio Azadi, a Persian artist, who said, when fishermen cannot go to sea, they repair nets. So even as we are navigating the sea now, in some ways, we're also in a situation where we're thinking about our preparedness for the next phase and the one after and the one after. So in some ways, we're also preparing our nets here. So three things for me that I would personally be doing as an HR professional, and I would urge everybody to as well. One, I think Norbert said this, it is a journey in a continuum. We may not see a definite new normal soon, and we will be moving in phases of current normal. Second one, we need to plan and prepare the organization with a long-term view in mind. So it was not about band-aid fixes that we were able to get through these 2 or 3 months. And like we said, there is a possibility of a future blended hybrid way of work. So how do we keep that in mind, and how do we prepare the organization? We need to appreciate and create awareness of the fact that there is a new way of working, which is possible. So how do we actively make that happen? The third one, and this is specifically true for our function, we need to be the voice of both, a voice and champion of both change and for people. We have the first order of responsibility to an organization and not at a cost to people. I think I would leave the fraternity with those 3 messages today.
Very good. Let me just build on what Prasad said. I think we as an HR professionals have huge opportunities, and I think we're in charge in order to continue this journey. For far too long, we have operated in a kind of work scheme which was like 1930, 1940, 1950, while the entire world has changed, but we're still going to work from 9 to 5 to 6. Needs of people have changed too. But we have still changed nothing. We have only added work sometimes into the night hours, because even small companies today have partners somewhere sitting in North America and you have to have a call. So it only ended up in more work time for employees. What we need to remind our companies, our leaders, is that, and I do hope that most of our companies have an ethical code, integrity. This is the reason why many of us are working. First is we need to rebuild and establish the trust, even now by example, that probably all of our employees did awesome while working from home. Many of my line managers were very impressed that it worked so well. And I say this because of the stereotype which is always in the air, right? But this is not surprising, because people working because it is their passion. They want to deliver. So we need to give them room, coach them effectively, but also get out of the way that they can focus and not coming every 5 minutes to the desk and saying, where are you at this point in time? So the other piece is on the working time. We'll need to identify what is special, beneficial for who. Maybe it is a kind of working time where people have really less core hours, 3, 4, in which the meetings are taking place. But then it's depending on what my diversity is. Do I have kids, in-laws, grandparents to take care of? Do I have a sport I would like to do? But at the end of the day, I need to deliver what my work plan is telling me. Only the output will need to be the measure. And as a line manager and coach, I need to make sure I am enabling these people. This is a very fundamental change what the HR function can drive. And now what, based on the experiences we had, we actually have data and not a hypothesis where we're telling our managers, believe me, it will be okay. Because the buy-in will be not there then. But today we have the proof.
I think the way I'll answer your question is it depends on your company's DNA and also the size, complexity, and the risk that's involved in the change that one is trying to push. I would also say that in the past, right, HR would try to make sure whatever we put out is 100% correct and accurate, and before you introduce change. But now I think it's important to really going forward, right? Experiment, and in the bigger the change, companies have more appetite if you position as a pilot. So do your homework, introduce a pilot, learn all the mistakes, and then you can mitigate all the risks, and then you can roll out that new program or approach to drive whatever change. If it's a big one, then obviously getting the buy-in from the top is extremely important. Otherwise there's a very high chance of failing. And in many change exercises, whether challenging or not, it's very important to speak to the person that's impacted by the change. So learning how to look at the individual, whether it's a stakeholder or employee, from a very holistic perspective, right? That he or she is an emotional being, right? And they need to know what's good for them, what's in it for them, and how it will benefit them, and the role of empathy, right, throughout that whole change process. So I think we are good in, rolling out policies, programs, but we are not so attuned, right, to managing people, or at least helping our managers to manage people, in a very holistic way, and to really, engage them at an appropriate level so that they really go along. So I really think that's really the skill of it. So the social part of it, the emotional part of it, the well-being part of it, to approach, right, and to have the workforce embrace change as a way of life. Because bear in mind, our change program is just one of many within the enterprise. You can imagine there are probably 15 other change initiatives going on. So what makes us unique and different is really the fact that we are supposed to know a little bit more about how to handle the employees from an emotional, mental, psychological standpoint. And so we should really play that up and lend our expertise to the leadership so that there's a higher chance of succeeding when we roll out any change.
Great, thank you. Just a shout out to the participants. Actually, we will be able to answer open Q&A, but currently I don't think anybody has typed any yet. So, I'm just going to ask my questions that I might have. I think, early in the week, couple days ago, we were all quite surprised that suddenly, we're commencing into phase 2, right, of the reopening. And monitoring the different chats that I see from the HR community, some of them are grappling with how do they continue to convince their bosses, the staff, that they should continue to work from home and default, but in that same vein, start the preparations to get people back safely. Any thoughts that you have regarding this in terms of what you're seeing out there in your organization or others?
I'm not sure. I think I have seen different, and as I elaborated earlier, it really depends on people. We have, during the circuit breaker, actually did pulse surveys with the organization, how they're doing, how they're feeling working from home, whether they miss office. And surprisingly, actually, many people find as longer the circuit breaker is, depending on whether this is a work you can do from home, of course, they said, well, I figured it out. I actually, I have my new rhythm now. I'm going to walk the dog in the morning. I'm taking care for my kids. And actually, then I'm actually focusing on this. Sometimes it didn't work as well. That is also a learning. And other people said, I can't wait until to come to the office again. Working in R&D, obviously, many of my employees wanted to go back into the labs because this is where the action happens, where you can do only so much working from home, right?
That's true.
But I think when the principle the government still holds on to is, if you can work from home, please do work from home. It's a fantastic principle. And actually, it can go much beyond COVID.
Yeah, excellent.
Well, I think companies really need to move, perhaps the ones that are more progressive, they've really moved beyond, why work from home, the benefits of work from home. And in fact, they're accelerating, in that direction. Companies in the middle, they're trying to find a hybrid, and I think they will still continue to pick up the lessons and, learn and perhaps struggle through, and they will implement some form of in-between, right, solutions. The ones that are not doing anything, and in fact, I hear companies can't wait to send employees back to work, right? Even right now, and even the start of phase 2 to come. I mean, those are the ones that I worry about, because the world has changed. They have yet to catch up, right? And I think that's probably still in denial mode around, the need to adopt a different leadership approach. So those are the ones that I worry about. Now, the most important, I would say, scary thing really is not so much work from home, but really work from anywhere, right? As you work from technology. So that's a big topic that I think over the coming months and years, we should collect a lot more data so that we can really see where and how, and the market is going to play itself out, and how it's going to impact on the roles in the workforce and all that. And definitely being accelerated by, some of the digital solutions. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
I
Thank
think
you.
if I just react to this, right, I do think there is some certain fear that now everybody will work from home. And there are big companies who basically said, well, why don't you work from home until December or January, or don't come back at all, but you'll get your paycheck as long as you deliver. I do think that there is merit in employees going to the office, maybe not every day from 9 to 5 or 6, but as I speak for my company, if we come together in a physical room, brainstorming together, we can create also great things. And we need these things. It cannot just be replaced by work from home. You can do this temporarily. But at the end of the day, I don't see my company and many other companies vanishing the office space. What it maybe helped is that as it was probably a wake-up call for many companies like the airline industry, the spaces got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And that in a way is a benefit because people do not consequently feel better. This actually helped us to remind there is a reason why there is a certain distance necessary, whether it is the comfort zone or is it the safe distancing. And that actually is a good thing. But I do see it in future, we will have a mix of people coming to the office, but I don't think people have to worry that suddenly my work will be done by somebody far, far, far away country who doesn't bother to work at any given time of the day. Physical meetings, proximity at some point in time has importance.
Sure, thank you. Sorry, I just need to interrupt because I do see some questions coming in and they're trickling in. So maybe we could turn to some of the questions. Give me a moment. I'll just kind of read from the top. So the panelists, if you want to read the questions, you can go into the Q&A panel as well. So the first question at the top from Sharad is saying that, there's a significant change brought about by COVID. I mean, we can't deny that. And org-led change initiatives in the regular course of business. So, with COVID, we don't have much of a choice. And so, maybe, sorry, I think this is more of a statement. I'm trying to read as fast as I can. So it says, with COVID, we don't and didn't have a choice and hence had to find new ways of evolving. And that's not always the case with change initiatives normally. So I guess the question was, what do you think in terms of the change that COVID had catalyzed and brought about that is different from the normal change initiatives had COVID not struck?
I would say, sorry, Prasad. Yeah, so I would say before COVID, the economic environment worldwide and even closer to home, it was really very challenging and uncertain. Yeah, for various reasons, the trade wars, the advent of, digitization, etc. So this whole COVID has put a spanner in the works for a lot of companies. And sure, it's the intensity, sure, it's the choice. But whatever it is, right, there are several types of companies out there. Some are looking to survive, some are looking to sustain, others are looking to even, buy other companies. And there's also that fourth category where, should we even start our business, right? So on and so forth. So I think there's a plethora out there, and I can see that in those four categories. So whatever it is, whether it's brought on by one of the four scenarios or not, that our role is really to help the companies to adjust the strategies accordingly. Now, traditional change, approaches, etc. It's can be large scale, can be very complex, can involve large teams, consultants, etc., etc. But it still doesn't take away from the fact that there are still some key success factors that make the change very successful, whatever the reason, brought on by either internal, impetus or some external crisis, like the way we are looking. And our role really is to very quickly, in a very agile manner, all right, put together, right, the change platform, the change, burning platform with the leadership. All right, look at the people's side of it, how we're going to mitigate the impact, have a very robust communication plan, and set very clear, measurable KPIs, around how we're going to go on this journey together. So I hope that, I think, this will be something that'll be very interesting because a lot of organizations right now are doing a lot of OD stuff. They are redesigning their organizations. And the best part is this, right? At least as far as I know, There's no AI automation there that can automatically design, the desired organization for, a company, right? And our expertise in OD, in change management, in leadership are very critical going forward, because I saw some of the questions related, around the impact of AI on our roles in the future. And anything that is less repetitive, anything that requires, high creativity, those are the sweet spots where HR can find, right, our future, value-added strategic role.
Yeah, I think on building on Carmen, I do think that we will and have probably left the space where we are moving from one transition into a new space, wait, and then it happens again. I think we will need to be comfortable living more or less in a VUCA world. So the change will be ongoing. As I move, employees will also now learn better that a process will be in place only for 4 to 5 or 6 months, and then reacting to new changes because they are coming so swiftly. And we will need to help them to still have oversight over how they're going to manage the business. But we will not be able to just stop and say, listen, okay, that was COVID. Now let's do the business for the next 2-3 years the way we want it, because the rest of the world will not do that. That requires from companies to become more agile, and so the employees as well.
Yeah, I think maybe, I wanted to segue to another question we should talk about. We can't talk about it as, here's the COVID time, and then, once COVID ends, we resume as normal. There was a question in the audience which talked about, how do we look at performance management aspects and appraisals, given that, for almost half the year, that's been disrupted. So any advice that you can give to the HR community out there about, I'm glad, someone's thinking beyond COVID, right? And preparing for the rest of the year and even into the first quarter. How should HR, advise leaders as well as the staff in terms of relooking and maybe even resetting some of these goals and KPIs?
Yeah, I think it's very, I try to be short, but I think COVID wasn't the entire year. Our fiscal year runs from July to June. Okay. Right, just as an example, right? So fiscal year is always 12 months. Ours is from July till June. Now, from July till February, that was what it was, and people delivered against this. And then we do have 3 months COVID, and plans must have changed in that time. People maybe didn't do what they agreed with the line manager or management before, but they did something else. They managed the situation, they managed the COVID situation, they got the products out, they delivered what they had to do within their function. And I believe that most of the people have worked to the maximum they could. And whatever I've heard within my company and other companies, my line managers and bosses are very impressed with what they did. So they did something. So when we go back to our employees and say, let's look at the last 12 months, what you did, we cannot just take the KPIs which were agreed at the beginning of the year. Yeah. All has to be taken into account, because our managers have managers too, right? Let's remember that they are employees too, highly paid employees, but they're employees too. And for them, the board will do the exactly same assessment.
Okay. Prasad, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, just a couple of points, Karina. One, I would actually be surprised if the management or the organization per se is already not looking at reprioritization in some way or the other.
Right.
I can give you an example from GovTech. Obviously, I don't believe there is a single person in this webinar today who hasn't used one of our product offerings, especially that's come up for COVID response. Right? Be it Safe Entry, be it Trace Together, Go Mask Wear, Go Supply, etc. And those all came up, which was not part of the plan. In fact, I've often shared this. We had just come out of our 2020 planning cycle, and we got pulled into COVID. So things obviously has changed. And then as an organization, as management, we're sitting and reprioritizing that. And we are making sure that that trickles down to the teams as well. Right? So that's important. And like Norbert said, A has been replaced by B, and then we need to be cognizant of that when we are measuring performance. The second one, And that's again, that's where empathy comes in, going back to what Carmen was saying. As management, as an organization, we need to realize that pretty much every single person went through a scenario that was absolutely new to us. I don't think we'd seen a crisis like this. So my personal view is that we are not going to be, this is not a time to hold ourselves to a cast in stone KPI or an OKR and say, you know what, we have a gun on your head. This is the time to show trust. This is the time to say, okay, we understand if you know, we haven't hit 100% of our goals or targets, but how do we recalibrate that? So I think it's a combination of both, prioritizing and then, you know, bringing in the judgment and empathy to allow for some changes in plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess, you know, another question that I thought was quite nice, looking at the Q&A list, is, you know, we talk about quite a bit about digital and technology and so on, and we talk about new ways of working. There's no turning back the clock. We are, you know, exiting out of circuit breaker and so on to a new world. So what are some of the skill sets or competencies that we think our people leaders and even our HR teams need to equip themselves with in order to, you know, enable that resilience, in order to elevate, I think, and evolve into more strategic, you know, sort of activities, given that so much of technology can help us automate and take care of the transactional elements? Carmen, is that something you might want to answer?
Yeah, so with HR, there are several clusters, which I feel is very important. First of all, you need to be tech savvy. Okay, if you're not today, please be progressively so, because our profession is just going to change. And you know, I've been told by people, HR people are not very comfortable with tech, so that's not very flattering to hear. So that's number one. Second thing is, you know, an understanding of how to manage, you know, an aging workforce, right? Because I see several questions there.
Yeah.
It's very relevant for Singapore in 10 years' time, right? A quarter of the population, 1 million of us, you know, will be 65 years and above and still productive and working away. So I think the ability to help them to navigate change, you know, be finding fulfilling careers in the second half, right? Or maybe the third half of their career is extremely critical. So I think having the skills to know how to architect careers for the older, you know, generation is very important, and how to bring the multi-generations together. So I see, you know, them being left behind, but yet I think there's hope, because if you have a lot more, you just got to institutionalize, you know, reverse mentoring programs. I think I see different parts of it in patches in different organizations. If it becomes more institutionalized, I really think that it will help to take away a lot more pain around helping them to adopt technology. The third thing is, you know, for HR to be extremely business savvy and agile, right? I have some appreciation about what the HR schools are teaching and graduating, but you know, I see also, you know, a lot more HR people changing jobs very frequently. So there's no deep, you know, learning around an experience or a particular skills, right? Because before you know it, they've really changed jobs. So they're asking very basic questions, which, you know, I think, you know, you've got to know your domain really well. You've got to be a real expert, but yet you've got to go, you know, broad as well, right, around the business arena. Then you have a context to speak to when you apply and share your business, your HR knowledge, okay? Fourthly, one last point, and you know, and be very open to new ideas, because I think sometimes we are so comfortable doing our own thing. We roll out our programs, our policies, and then we say, okay, been there, done that, right? But actually, it is not like that, okay? So you really got to be very, very open to step out of the comfort zone all the time, all right? So if you are not stepping out, then you are not able to be that change organization, that agent for your organization. Yeah.
Great. Prasad, one last comment from you, then I probably should be wrapping up, since we've coming up to the top of the hour.
Absolutely, Karina. I just wanted to chime in and add to what Carmen just said and zoom out a little bit on some of the behavioral traits that HR leaders or leaders should be focusing on. One is the ability to operate with first principles, and that's very important to be consistent with our behavior. So how do we operate with first principles? The second one, COVID has taught us it's absolutely important to be agile in our thinking and planning, so nimble-footedness. And third is, it's not about one person's heroics anymore. It is a village that comes in together. So collaboration is absolutely critical. So those are the 3 points that I wanted to just share on top of what Carmen's shared.
Great. So maybe Norbert, just one very short, 30-second shout out to HR. How would you like to leave them at the end of this webinar in terms of pearls of wisdom from yourself?
Well, HR managers are business managers. I always say that we own half of the business because we are responsible for the organization. And I cannot do this without understanding the business and the business context in which we are playing with, because only then I can create HR brands and policies that actually are enabling. And secondly is we really have to constantly learn. In this COVID crisis, we have seen very old people learning how to do FaceTime. My father, 84, figured it out. And why can they upskill themselves and we not? It is a choice to a certain extent.
Right.
No matter in what size of the company you are, you will always find a reason why not to do it. Okay. But you need to think about where you want to go at certain time in your career and then continuously pressing that and upgrading your skill. Then you get the opportunity, not consequently in changing the employer, but moving this employer forward to a better business scenario together with the organization.
Great. Thank you so much. I think, we're out of time, and I just want to say a very big thank you to the participants still on for patiently, working with us past the technical glitches. I'd like to thank my panelists, Carmen, Prasad, and Norbert for a wonderful sharing session, and also being very patient and understanding with the technology that we have today. I think, Joyce, you can now maybe show the feedback form so that we can provide, some feedback. Like there's a QR code. Great. So if I can get, some of you, all of you, I guess, who've stayed on and attended this webinar, to scan this QR code and then provide us with feedback. I'm sure I'll see some regarding the technology. But on top of that, maybe share some of the things, key takeaways that you took away from this webinar, and also any suggestions. We're planning these webinars coming down about once a month or so when I'm able to secure my IHRP Master Professionals time. So any other topics that you'd like us to cover, please highlight that. And I know we weren't able to get to all the questions. They were kind of streaming in more furiously near the end. So what we'll do is I will work with the panelists to come back with the response, and then we'll send that back out to the RSVP list so that you can also benefit from some of the additional sharing through the Q&A. If not, I think, I just want to wish everyone a really good evening. Thank you for staying with us, and please stay safe and get ready for, the gradual reopening. Thank you.